Hello friends, neighbors, Johnny Wish Neighbor here. Welcome down the Nook and welcome to a tasting through grain blend and malt whiskeys. These are all from an independent bottler. They're all mentioned that they are exceptional. And I will just talk through, of course, what I'm tasting in each, give you a sense of, what I like for my palate. But I also want this conversation to be a little bit about, what makes the grain and blend different, and from there also just the malt. So if you've got any of these, a nice grain style, a blend, a malt. These are all Scotches, so they come only from Scotland. They've aged in Scotland. And there's some pretty cool comments that there's some 30-year-old Macallan in here. There's some other like 33, 34-year-old, other whiskeys in here. So there's some pretty interesting stuff. Why don't you pour a dram of something you like? Come on back. 3, 4. Well, thanks for staying with me. As I said in the opener, this is an independent bottler, Don Sutcliffe, and I believe, at least that's what I've heard from other reviewers, that this was really a team with Sutcliffe and Willie Phillips, the past production manager, I think was a production manager at Macallan for many, many years. And so, they clearly have access to awesome casks and awesome aged whiskey. I'll even throw up later what's in these more specifically, but really, especially in the blend, that's the one that I've seen published even some years and whatnot, some pretty old stuff. But I want to start with the exceptional grain. Now, the exceptional grain is a blend of about 5 distilleries. Well, that's what it says on the back, 5. Oh, and I should say, this bottler has been putting out different editions. And what I have here is the exceptional grain, and it's the 3rd edition. So, as we talk about this is the 3rd edition. It's 43%. There's 5 different distilleries in here, and I'll put them in the feed at some point. They marry the different grain distillates of different ages from different distilleries in first fill Oloroso sherry. And in fact, that they do that for all of these. That's how they marry them together, with some undisclosed time of resting in first fill ex Oloroso cask. So that's kind of cool to know too. I don't know anything about color and I don't know anything about non-chill. I'd love to say they're both natural and non-chill, but I don't know that. And I don't know the ages. The only one that I have rumored of ages is on the blend. The rest are just rumors, like wild rumors. And this one, I really don't know exactly any ages on this. But being a grain whiskey, usually it's made up from corn mostly, but it's distilled usually in column stills. But it could be any grain, not barley, that's been distilled and then aged. So that's really a hallmark or a distinguishing factor of grain whiskeys, grain scotches for sure, that they are made up, usually corn, but really any grain, not barley, and then aged in whatever casking, usually ex-bourbon. I said this one's finished in first fill Oloroso. So it's a grain whiskey. Let's see how it is, nose and palate. It's sweet, it's buttery, it's a little bit floral, lots of vanilla. This to me is immediately familiar, as in it has a lot of Canadian whiskey notes. It really does. A little bit of Irish notes in there too, but really I would say this feels like a Canadian whiskey, a little bit on the nose, not as sweet as some. Definitely a lot of Canadians are very sweet, whereas this is floral, vanillas, and some brighter yellow fruits. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. Well, that's better whiskey than like typical style whiskeys. That's pretty good. I know they all carry the term exceptional, but there must be some age on here because I can find a real grassiness or almost a sharper acetone glue in grain when it's young, and I don't get that here. Instead, I get, again, butterscotches, butters, toffees, vanillas, fruit really, like maybe a white, like what would be a crisp yellow apple or something like that. Not a lot of fruit, but And then just a grain fullness. It does have nice palate presence. It's not quite as robust as I would hope, so I'm worried it's chill filtered. And there is some gentle spicing, like, I don't know, just a relaxed bit of spicing around the edges. Nothing cracked peppery, which I expected because maybe some of the grains in here are rye, but I don't really get that. Instead, sweet but full, relaxed, broad scope, broad fruiting. It's a nice whiskey, and I think it has some age, or it would have been a lot sharper in a bunch of areas. So, nice grain whiskey. So moving over to a Scotch blend. This is the exceptional blend. And it has, I think, 13 or 14 distilleries. And again, I'll put them down below, that have been blended into this. And now we're talking, it's got grain. So it still has some of that column still, likely lots of corn. And then it's been blended with malt, usually single malts, but from a variety of distilleries. And in fact, just reading the back, comparing the two, I think they dropped Loch Lomond and Strathclyde, I think. And then the rest is they've got some of the same grains that they have in the grain. And then they've added just a huge number of, which would have come from each distillery as a single malt, but malted barley into this blend. So, malted barley is in beautiful pot stills, and it tends to be more expensive than the column still work. We'll see how this affects, nose and taste, really to get a sense of, okay, we only have grain whiskeys here, and now we have grains and malted barley. See how it goes. Oh, it's interesting. Oh, and I should say this is the first edition. So this was third edition, this is first edition. The nose actually, before I get into the malt character, significantly more sherry influence. That's interesting. It makes me wonder if some of the single malts had spent time in sherry because, they've both been married in first fill ex Oloroso, but it's very present for me on the nose. So that is a richer fruit, a darker fruit, a little bit of a leathering, a little bit of a fig plum. Like, it's not like as thick as fig, but that kind of red direction. Maybe a little berry. Yeah, well, now that I've said that, sure, I get a little bit of berries, but not raspberry. Almost a bit of a strawberry. It's quite sweet. Doing a bit of a direct side-by-side really brings out the higher sugars, tighter sweetness of this rounder, fuller, as I said, some of those cooked fruits and whatnot. So it's already getting also, I suggest, some influence from not quite nutty, but a little bit nutty going on in there, that type of direction, which could be with the sweetness, you start to think of chocolates or whatnot. We're not all the way there yet, but we're getting some of that from all of those malts kicking around in here. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. This palate for me, again, significant more sherry influence. It is creamier. I am getting chocolates and espressos mixed with fruits that are cooked berries, cooked, some dark red fruit. It's more coating for me, even though I suspect these are all filtered. But yeah, and a little bit of actually like a sweeter, like a sliced almond in there. Clean finish, a little bit drying. Again, a lot more sherry influence. I gotta try another sip of this one. I really like this blend, like a lot. And it's interesting that I can still get some of the vanillas and toffees that I'm getting over here in the just the grain, but it is more dimensional, richer, and has a lot of those other, nut, chocolate, red fruits that this grain just doesn't have. Now, if you like that brighter profile, this is a really tasty whiskey as well. For me and my palate, this blend is going in the right direction. So we'll round out our conversation with the exceptional malt. And again, just reading the names on the back, not having actual insight, it sure looks like they just dropped the grain component and kept all of the same single malts from different distilleries. Of course, we don't call it a single malt now because all of those malts have been vatted together. So it's a blended malt or vatted malt. In that case, it's only barley, but they've been aged in individual caskings that came from those distillers, and then they were married in first fill Oloroso, just like these two. Again, both of these are rumored to have like 30-year-old Macallan, but also like 33-year-old, was it Cambridge? I can't remember who was it. No, not Cambridge. Shoot, who was it? It's okay. I'll put some stuff down below. But this one is the second edition. I think so. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that I have first of the blend, third of the grain, and second of the malt. And I'll get to how I got them and why I have them. But let's just talk this malted only. So there's no grain whiskeys in here. It's just different single malts from different distilleries. So now it's a blended malt. On the nose. Well, we're moving in a theme. I'm just going to compare the nose quickly here. Yeah, coming back to it, it is like I've lost a little bit of those higher vanillas, the little sweet, not quite honey, but that kind of note that I'm really getting a lot in the grain. It's still kicking around here, and here now, this is just warmer sugars, a little bit of oaks, lots of dark fruits. And we continue to step into a higher sherry profile. Let's try it on the palate. Sláinte. That's a really nice malt. Here I am getting more spicy. I'm getting more Christmas cake spices. That whole, sweetness of those brandied cherries in there, and then but also that kind of mealiness and the little bits of nuts and stuff, and then you've got like savory spices, a little bit of anise. Some cinnamon. So of all of these, for me, it's the most complex in its spice palette and presentation of a thicker sherry. I know Vin reviewed these two a while back, and he was getting sulfur a lot on the blend, and I would say this malt has even more of that. I'm really not that sensitive to sulfur. Part of me wishes I would be, because I know many of you really pick it up more than I do. But as we're in this continuum into thicker sherry, this one would have that edges of sulfur note, that edges of a resinous sherry, musty oaks, that book library leather, that kind of stuff. Definitely going here. Gonna take another sip of this, and I want to give you my final thoughts. I suggest if you can find these for a good price, I'll talk about the price I found them for. This is an excellent, a really good exercise to work your palate through about grain and blends, and I would say single malts, but I know this is a vatted malt or a blended malt, because it's really taught me quite a bit. I believe these are incredibly similarly treated and age-wise and that one, and so it really lets what's going into these expressions kind of speak of the difference. If you're a bright, sweet, vanilla floral, like this grain whiskey is really nice. The malt, we'll go all the way over to the malt, is the thickest, most resinous, also older, but could be slightly bitter. Really drinks like a really good single malt. And the blend has helped me understand why blends can be really good and why they can be really popular. I think this blend combines exactly this sweetness and the aromatics that I'm getting over here, and the darker and the nut and the chocolates that are coming over on the single malt, and gives a pretty broad palate expression. And I'm liking this blend. Coming into this video, I thought it was my favorite. Right now, head to head, I'm actually gonna knock it out and say that this single malt, it's not vetted malt, blended malt, is actually a little bit better for me. And that was tough. I really thought this blend was good, but I'm really liking this blend. These are all great whiskeys. I'd say 3 3/4, 4-star, and 4 1/4, just to give my preferences today. But heading into this video, without shooting head to head, I actually thought I liked this blend the best. I wish I could have shot these when they came out. They've been coming out, I think, since 2013, which is quite a while ago now. But the reason why I'm okay with shooting them now is like these two, I can't find this anymore. I have seen on shelves, still on shelves, for $45 Canadian, which is ridiculous because these were at least $100 bottles, at least. I think they were like 130 when they came out. So, you know, hit the streets, check out a few past liquor stores and see if they're around. Because maybe now, because they really don't have a lot of name brand for non-whiskey geeks, you're going to find them on a good sale. And as I was so fortunate to do. I recommend this. And if not these, I'll try to find another independent bottler or distillery that kind of puts out a grain, a blend, and a malt, because it has been, even for myself, really fun to drink through this and to get a sense of, oh yeah, that's characteristic of grain. And here I'm getting this malt, and this is what they can do to help each other out. Thanks for joining me. A little bit long, apologize, but I hope you guys are having just a great weekend. See you next time.